Hello everybody, a very warm welcome to the Lausitzring as we get set for the first action of the weekend on track, this second weekend of the 2020 DTM season. And as the graphic says there on your pictures, you can see that we're using this weekend the shorter layout here at the Lausitzring, with its multiple layouts that it has. We'll be here next weekend using the longer Grand Prix version of the layout, and all the teams are going to be staying here. It's going to be a really busy 5-week period for the DTM because we've got back-to-back weekends here at the Lausitzring. Then at the beginning of September, it's off to Assen, and that is followed by consecutive weekends at the Nürburgring, which again is using 2 different circuit layouts, so 4 race meetings over the next month or so. And there you get the onboard pictures with the reigning champion René Rast, who news on him in a moment, and it very much affects this driver as well, Nico Muller. So first of all, to say welcome along to those of you watching and joining us for this first free practice session, which is going to run for 45 minutes. My name's Chris Hartley. I'm here trackside overlooking, sadly, the empty grandstands here at the Lausitzring, the main grandstand on top of which the commentary box is homed, overlooking the pit lane and the pit boxes on the opposite side of the circuit from where I am. Right underneath me in the grandstand is vast. It holds 25,000 spectators when it is full, and the whole circuit can hold over 120,000 spectators. But sadly, as you know, they're not allowed because of the current corona restrictions to join us this weekend. Good news, however, in that is the plan to bring everybody, well, not everybody, but a lot of fans back when we go to Assen for the 4th weekend of the season. Assen, the plan to have a limited number of 10,000 spectators on each of the 2 race days, Saturday and Sunday, which is fantastic news. Right, news then. We had a discussion that was held at 10 o'clock this morning.
Radio check on track.
Radio from Robin Freins. And that discussion has had a significant impact on the championship standings. At Spa, René Rast won the 2nd race of the weekend ahead of Nico Muller. Nico having won the 1st race of the weekend in the opening championship round at Spa-Francorchamps a couple of weeks ago. However, it emerged that René had pressed the push-to-pass button twice towards the end of the race, but he was the race leader, and you're not allowed to press it when you're the race leader. Normally, it is not active when you're the race leader, but there was a blind spot which all the teams knew about on the far side of the circuit from Malmedy up to the Brussels hairpin, where the signal didn't work, so it became available to manually override that. And just as an instinct, René pressed the button just for a couple of seconds and used the push to pass when he was defending his lead from Nico Muller. So that was investigated. The discussion between the officials was held here this morning, and with Audi, of course, involved in that as well. The case was heard, and the end result is that René Rast has been given a 10-second penalty from that 2nd race. That means he's no longer the round 2 race winner, and it means the victory goes to his big championship rival Nico Muller, who was only 0.4 of a second behind him as they crossed the line. It also promotes Robin Freins up to 2nd place and demotes René Rast down to 3rd position with that 10-second penalty. That's obviously, all those early days in the championship had quite a big effect on the standings, in that now with 2 race wins out of 2, Nico Muller has moved on to 53 points. He's got a 23-point lead over the next best placed driver, which now becomes Jamie Green. And René Rast, having lost 10 points because he would have picked up 25 for the win, he's only picked up 15 for 3rd. He's on 29 points and 3rd in the championship standings, now 24 behind Nico Muller. Robin Freins also gaining 3 extra points because he was promoted from 3rd up to 2nd, so he is next up in the table, but now on 25 points, with Mike Rockenfeller on 22. Loic Duval, who was on the podium in race 1 at Spa, 6th in the championship on 21 points. And Lucas Auer on his return to the DTM after a season away, and now a BMW driver, having previously raced for Mercedes. He is the leading BMW driver in terms of championship points at the moment, 7th in the table on 10 points. It's also affected the team standings, and it has put the Audi Sport Team Abt Sportsline squad to the top of the teams table now with 78 points, whereas Team Rosberg, who lost 10 points, those extra 10 points going the way of Sportsline, they are second now on 59 points. So 78 points for Abt Sportsline, 59 for Rosberg, down to second place. And then Team Phoenix coming here on 43 points as the green flag is waved. The session goes live. It was a big weekend for everybody to be back racing at Spa. It was a very competitive weekend for Audi, who dominated both in terms of qualifying and the race results as well. And Audi in the Brand Championship coming here with 152 points to BMW's 34. So work to do here for BMW. They are hoping to be much closer to the pace of Audi's. It was certainly an improvement over some of the performances last year, but BMW know they need to really step up. They are hopeful that it was circuit related. Spa obviously a very different circuit to most, with all its high-speed turns and all the aero and downforce that's required there. This a very different track, much shorter, and here mechanical grip at the Lausitzring is going to be much more important than aerodynamic grip. There are lots of slow-speed corners. You need to get good traction out of those corners, and so potentially the tyre wear will be less. It's certainly cooler than it was at Spa a couple of weeks ago. But there will still be demands on the Hankook tyres that everybody uses in terms of all that horsepower. 580 brake horsepower without push to pass, 640 with it. That gets transferred to the rear wheels when they're accelerating out the corners, can still have an effect, but not so many high-speed corners here. So at the Lausitzring, we're using the sprint layout as you ride on board with Robin Fries. The cars now, most of them out on circuit, building up some pace, just getting a recce of a circuit which they're going to be getting very familiar with over the next couple of weekends, or different versions of it at least. This is the 3.478 kilometre long version.
Please tell me when you're in the pit lane.
And we'll be using the 4.5 kilometre longer version of the circuit next weekend. So we're here in the Brandenburg region to the east of Germany, fairly close to the border with the Czech Republic and with Poland, and around about 130 kilometres south of Berlin. The nearest town is Quivetza, and here at this huge venue with its tri-oval, which was first developed and first launched back in the early 2000s to host the IndyCar series, the kart series, which it did for 2 years, and parts of those the tri-oval circuit is still used, including when they come out of the last turn, head over the start-finish line, and just before the first of the banked corners, they turn off the circuit for the first left-hander, the sprint left-hander. It's also worth noting that this is an anti-clockwise circuit rather than most circuits clockwise, so different physical tests and demands on the drivers. René Rast there at the end of the pit lane, on board with him now, and an issue, I suspect, for René. No team radio as yet, but René Rast has already had a difficult start to the day with that 10-second penalty and the loss of his race victory at Spa. Now held and waiting at the end of the pit lane, and now finally gets underway. So,
truck clear, one car on the finish line now.
So perhaps just holding René to give him a little bit of space. He was a winner here last year at the Lausitzring. Had pole position in 2019 as well. The sprint version of the circuit last used in 2017. And he was on the podium that day. The most successful driver here at the Lausitzring of the current grid is Jamie Green, who's had 3 race wins at the Lausitzring. There have also been a couple of race wins for Lucas Auer, who's had many miles testing around this circuit because he spent much of his single-seater career as a Formula 3 driver with the Muka Motorsport team, Peter Muka's team, who are based fairly locally to here, based in Berlin. So he did a lot of testing here back in his single-seater days. And indeed is another driver with a good record here, Lucas, having had 2 race victories, including his maiden race victory was here at this circuit back in 2016, and that was actually on the sprint version of the track that we're using now. And you get the graphic to the bottom right corner of your screen telling you the revs and the rev counter, which gear the drivers are in, and the top speed, or the current speed, which is something that was a big talking point at Spa, as René Rast makes his way onto the start-finish line, goes underneath the commentary box and over the line, because we had for the first time a DTM car accessing 300 kilometres an hour. Fabio Scherer, the rookie driver managing a top speed of 302 kilometres an hour down the Kemmel Straight. Jonathan Abedin and Philip Eng also achieved that in the race. Certainly in Jonathan's case and in Philip's case, they both said afterwards that they had a tow, but the first driver to achieve that speed was Fabio Scherer, so he gets the record. He didn't know about it apparently until after he got out of the car at the end of the race and the team told him about it. So that was good news for him. It's good news as well, as Fabio has said, for the rookie drivers, that they're getting back to the normal format here of having 2 free practice sessions. So we got this free practice session from 1 till 1:45. And then we have a second free practice session later on this afternoon from 4:30 till 5 o'clock, a slightly shorter session of 30 minutes. Whereas at Spa, we had just the 1 free practice session. And of course, it was a new circuit to a lot of the drivers, and most of them in terms of driving a DTM car. But now more time for particularly the rookies to try and get used to things. One of the rookies is Robert Quivetza, ex-Grand Prix racer. So far has set the only competitive time of the session with a 1 minute 19.247. He went well in the free practice at Spa, got himself up into the top 4, but didn't quite manage to get things together in either qualifying or the race. But difficult championship to come into this with its high quality. So there's the championship leader, Nico Muller, with an unbeaten record now in terms of those 2 race wins. Overtaking will not be as free and easy perhaps as it was at Spa, so some of the drivers saying qualifying is going to be really important in both of the qualifying sessions on Saturday and Sunday. Great onboard view then as you ride with Nico Muller, and you see just how close they get to the wall as they come onto the banked section of the tri-oval, heading over the grid hatchings and about to go over the start-finish line. Through he goes, Nico Muller, who's got the fastest time of the session with that 1 minute 17.088 seconds, which is more than 2 seconds quicker than the previous best. The time's still going to be coming down very rapidly now because most people spent the first couple of laps just building up temperatures and getting used to the settings, working through a process. Now they're starting to unleash the speed. Robin Freins has gone second quickest with the 1 minute 17.331 and was absolute fastest in the first sector of the lap. And then we've got Ferdinand von Habsburg, the Austrian, who at the moment is making a 1-2-3 for Audi in the very, very early stages of this free practice session. So Muller with a good start to the session. The beginning of this lap was pretty good as well, with an absolute, personal best in the first sector, but it looks like he's backed off a little bit now. This low slung onboard camera on the front splitter. He's maybe building up for another go now, getting himself a bit of track position as through he charges. Mike Rockenfeller, one of the drivers just ahead of him on the road. He's just gone through turn 1 as Muller goes over the line to have another go at this. We've got Jonathan Abedin is the best placed BMW driver at the moment with personal bests in the first, well, in all of the sectors, but his time is a 1 minute 18.2, so over a second away. But Philip Eng, who has quite often been BMW's leading light, certainly in the 2019 season he was, absolute best in the final sector, and he's gone second quickest overall now, and that's encouraging for BMW. 1 minute 17.279 seconds. As I mentioned, Philip, one of the drivers that got over 300 kilometres an hour at Spa, and he said, he actually knew at the time, I was watching the speed, he said, because I knew I'd got a tow, I knew I was getting close, and I watched the speed go up 297, 298, got to 300, and just after that I hit the brakes at the end of the Kemmel Straight, but I didn't overshoot the corner, so it was all good. And he actually said that the last time I went over 300 kilometres an hour in a race car was when I had a Formula 1 test for BMW more than 10 years ago, back in 2008. So he absolutely loved that, and as actually said, it just shows what a great car this 2020 DTM machine is to be able to go that quickly. Muller's on another fine lap here, absolute best in the first 2 sectors and the third, and he gets into the 1:16, so 1 minute 16.714 seconds. That's half a second quicker than Philip Eng, who's on another personal best lap, it seems. He's about to come through and complete that, just in the final sector at the moment. Robin Fryns third. Jamie Green, as I mentioned, is the driver in the current grid with the most wins here at the Lausitzring. He's fourth quickest now after a very impressive weekend at Spa-Francorchamps, where by his own admission he just lacked a little bit in the qualifying sessions, the first one in particular, but come the races he was absolutely flying, and he had that fine charge through the field to get onto the podium in race 1, having qualified out of the top 10 down in 11th place to get all the way through to second. He had a slightly better qualifying on Sunday, but still had work to do to come through to pick up 4th place. So Jamie, he's looking for his first championship title, second in the points coming into the weekend with those revised points. Philip Eng's on a good lap here. He's dropped down to 4th behind Green, who had a personal best on the previous lap, and also Ferdinand Habsburg, who personal best in the first 2 sectors and an absolute best in the final sector to go second quickest. Marco Wittmann's improved as well to go 4th now. The 2-time champion with a 1 minute 17.267. So I think the time for Muller is a 1 minute 16.714, a 1 minute 16.8 exactly for Habsburg, 1 minute 17.031, 2/10 slower for Green in 3rd, and he's 2/10 quicker than Wittmann in 4th with a 1:17.267. That's just changed though because Philip Eng crosses the line and puts his BMW up to 4th place. Wittmann down to 5th. So Eng with a 1:17.043. That's only 12 thousandths of a second slower than Jamie Green. Wittmann on a 1:17.2, and we saw Sheldon van der Linde starting his lap. He's just finished it, and he's gone into the 1:17.2s as well now to go 6th quickest, the South African. Also on a 1:17.2, Mike Rockenfeller in 7th, Robin Fryns is 8th, Loic Duval is 9th, and René Rast at the moment is only in 10th place, but don't worry too much about that if you are a René Rast fan, because this is a free practice session, remember, and they're not necessarily just going out and out for single lap pace. That is something they'll work on, but they'll have a whole process that they'll be working on through these 2 free practice sessions. And it's not just a case of needing to be quick in qualifying here at the Lausitzring. You need to understand how the car and the tyres will react on longer runs. So that's something they'll be working towards. More fuel in the car, a heavier load, and to see how the longer race pace holds up and any changes they might need to make. Well, for sure they'll be going for a single lap pace at points during the 2 free practice sessions. And certainly in this afternoon's half-an-hour session, I would think towards the end of that, they'll go for some really quick lap times. But free practice results don't always tell the whole story of how quick a car is. So the top 2 have made their way back into the pits, Muller and von Habsburg. You get the sense that the championship leader, not just because he's championship leader, but because he had such a good year last year, by far his best to date in the championship, with that runner-up spot behind René Rast. You get the sense that Nico has took a lot from that. He's learned a lot about himself, about driving the car. He's gained in confidence, and he's really carried that through to this year. And the Swiss was in absolutely supreme form at Spa. And yes, he's picked up the second race victory of the 6th of his career because of this penalty, which has now been applied to René Rast. However, remember, he was only 0.4 of a second behind him at the line, and he won the first race.
And we are fastest in Sector 3. We are missing 1.5 tenths Sector 1 and 3 tenths Sector 2.
So, team radio, Loic Duval being told, you are very good at the end of the lap, but we're just losing 1.5 tenths, which is a fair bit through the first sector, and losing out a little bit as well in the second sector. So Loic Duval getting the information through from his engineer Philip Luth at Team Phoenix. Pretty good start to the season for Loic, the Frenchman, former Le Mans winner, with his first podium of the season coming in that first race at Spa. Wasn't quite on the pace in the second race. And what was a cooler second day of action in the Ardennes Forest. Watching Mike Rockenfeller, who's got himself to 4th place. Hasn't had a flying first sector, but it wasn't bad. But he has backed it off now through the second sector. The second sector should be about 19.5 seconds, maybe slightly under that if you're going for a really quick lap, but he's dropped off to 22 seconds. So whether he'll pit at the end of this one or whether he'll build it up and have another attack in a moment, we'll find out. But for now, Mike Rockenfeller on a slowish lap, but going well in 4th place. He said he loved absolutely every lap of Spa, loved being back in the car, loved being back in the DTM. On board then with Robert Quivetza as he gets to grips with the DTM for the first time around this circuit. This 2-litre, 600 brake horsepower plus machine. And he was in action at Silverstone last weekend because he's still involved in Formula 1 as a reserve driver for the Alfa Romeo team. The first ever pole to race in Formula 1, the only one to do so, and the only one to race in the DTM. Robert currently in 14th place. 35 years of age now. Got a couple of 14th place finishes at Spa, but he wasn't too far away from the pace. Racing with Williams last year in Formula 1, got the team's only point in what was an uncompetitive car. But his real golden period of Formula 1 came as a BMW Sauber driver. Victory in the 2008 Canadian Grand Prix. I'm sure there would have been many, many more, maybe even a title push had he not had his crash in rallying and his injury and his time away from racing. But what a remarkable story to come back and to be successful in rallying as the inaugural WRC2 World Rally Champion, and then back to Formula 1 and back now into DTM and touring cars. We're delighted to have such a talent as Robert with us, and I'm sure he's going to get better and better as the season goes on. So René Rast, who's only set the 11th fastest time of the session so far, goes out on what's become a fairly quiet track at the moment. Out-braking is always a feature of this course, and running to turn 1 should be particularly interesting during the races. They drop down to around about 90 kilometres an hour and second gear. And then you got this sequence of corners as you ride on board with René. He's still building up speed, but you get the sense from this onboard that if you get one corner wrong, you get them all wrong. Throws you off your line, and it's all about rhythm and momentum through this next sequence of corners. The left, the right, the left, the right, all the way through. So you get back onto the little short straight on the exit to turn 5. Just a short acceleration there, and then they drop back down to second gear for turn 6. And it's only really on the start-finish straight they're able to unleash all the horsepower available to them.
Start-finish. At the moment, I see no one.
Yeah, and what we saw with René Rast there, we're seeing with Robin Freins now, just waiting for some clear track. The Dutchman who got his maiden pole position at Spa and said in slightly ruder words than I'll say that it was about time, really. And competitive in both of the races as well. Well, in the second race, in the first race, he was competitive at the start, but he really struggled with the tyres and what was track temperature of in excess of 40 degrees and then air temperature over 30 degrees. And, well, from pole position, you're always looking to win the race, of course, but unfortunately for Robin, he fell backwards in the second half of the race. Still got in the points, but only 9th place. But in race 2, onto the podium. Was third over the line. He's now been promoted to second place after René Rast has been handed this 10-second penalty this morning. Robert Quivetza back in the pit, still down in 14th place. So Nico Muller's...
I'm not good. Yeah. Not the disaster balance, but yeah, it's overall sliding.
So Robert not completely happy with the setup of the car there.
Okay, so just to confirm, we have instability on entry a little bit and lack of traction.
As well as great speed, one of the things you're going to get as a team, as a race engineer with Robert Quivetza, is brilliant feedback with all of his vast years of experience. So he'll be working hard on that side of things to get the car as quick as he can. As we follow René Rast now through this sequence of early left-right corners, making his way, building up the speed to just about 100 kilometres an hour. And now I think about to start a flying lap. We'll see how he gets on this one. First sector wasn't that good. Through the first sector, René a 27.0, the absolute best through there so far. I think it's about a 25.8. So maybe not this lap, the one after is where he might attack. Got Muller back out there, but not flying as yet. Von Habsburg out there as well, going well, isn't he, in second place. He looked pretty competitive in the free practice session until he went off at Spa with about 10 minutes to go, and that, I think, kind of put him on the back foot for the rest of the weekend. But the speed is absolutely there for Ferdinand Habsburg, the Austrian, and he's second quickest here at the moment. Marco Wittmann third, the best of the BMWs in the pits. Mike Rockenfeller in the pits as well. He's fourth quickest. Jamie Green is out there on track. He's fifth. Philip Eng and Loic Duval, 6th and 7th, are in the pits. And Sheldon van der Linde back out there now. He's 8th, Robin Fryns 9th, Lucas Auer in 10th place. That's Rast going around the outside of Sheldon van der Linde. Just coming up to the completion of his lap here, about to go through the final turn. And push on now, you suspect, on this lap, René Rast. Already he makes his way then through turn 1. Straight then into the right, left sequence at turn 3. And then down to first gear for turn 4. Gets past one car with no real dramas. And the car looks fairly well balanced, but you suspect maybe René's on a longer run here rather than going for a single lap pace currently. And we'll work out the setup before we get to the 2 races on Saturday and Sunday. The best theoretical lap time is the one that Muller has achieved. All the best sectors put together are that 1 minute 16.714. But it's tight. Habsburg 1:16.8. Wittmann 1:16.9 and Rockenfeller 1:16.9 as well. So only a couple of tenths separating the top 4 in this free practice session so far, which is just about halfway through now. 23 minutes or so left on the clock. And just to make the point that all the teams and drivers, or the vast majority of them, are going to stay here on site. So with another race weekend starting next Friday, and for obvious reasons of trying to keep everybody in a bubble, everybody stays here, and that will give them the chance to continue working with their engineers and trying to figure out the cars and improve them as much as they can. So important with this crammed season that we now have, with everything crammed into just 99 days, that the drivers and teams are able to hit the ground running at the start of every weekend. Of course, they'll still be maintaining their training regimes as well, the drivers, during the few days that we have in between race weekends here at the Lausitzring, the first of several back-to-back meetings that we've got here this season. As Muller back out on the circuit, a second or so off his best time there with a 1 minute 17.8 currently. Vast site this. It was originally a huge former open coal mine when they first opened the circuit and built the circuit back in 2000. And one of the great things about being able to commentate here
lane is clear.
is the fact that you can see the whole circuit pretty much from the commentary box.
4, remember, idle, preload and blips.
And that, of course, is true of the grandstands when they're full, because they're right underneath and around where the commentary box is situated. So high up, you have to get a lift to get up to the top here, an elevator. Wittmann getting prepared and ready to go back out. Finds a gap and goes out. Just a single point picked up for Marco Wittmann at Spa. 11th in the first race. He very nearly got a point there, but Jonathan Abedin charged past him, squeezed past him, coming out of the last corner on the run to the checkered flag to steal the final point. Marco did pick up at least a point for 10th place in race 2, but not a happy weekend for Marco, really. And be expecting much more here at the Lausitzring. They need to close the gap. 2016 and 2014 DTM champion now out on circuit, but a good start to the session. That's lap time that he posted before he came into the pits, putting him 3rd quickest and easily the best of the BMWs at the moment. He's 1 minute 16.9 compared to Philip Eng's 1:17.043, though shows just how close it is, because there's less than a tenth between them, but one is 3rd quickest and the other currently is only 6th fastest. So Wittmann builds up the speed in the BMW. running with the RMG team in that BMW M4. Never had a win here at the Lausitzring. He was second a couple of years ago, and he's had some good results. Fourth in 2016 around the sprint version of the circuit. He was fourth in one of the races last year as well, and he's had several top 6 finishes, but he's never quite got onto the top step of the podium. He'd be absolutely delighted if he could manage that this weekend, perhaps against expectation. But as I say, a good start for him. Nobody at the sharp end on flyers at the moment. And Lucas Auer, Robert Quivetza and Timo Glock all set personal best lap times before they came into the pits, but they're all still in the pits, those 3 drivers. Well, the car looks fairly well planted to the eye, that's for sure. And through the first 2 sectors, Marco Wittmann. Okay, the second sector was pretty good actually. Just a couple of tenths away from the best that I've seen. Lucas Auer was pretty quick through the second sector on his lap, but it's the first and final sectors that are the longer sectors. They're the ones you've really got to get right to get the time. In terms of how the lap is divided up into 3 sectors, 3 split times. The first sector obviously takes them over the start-finish line, and it takes them through just before the entrance to turn 6, at the end of that short straight midway around the lap. That's the first sector. The second sector only takes in turns 6, 7 and 8. So just the left, the double right, and then onto the back straight. That's a very short sector, about 19.5 seconds for the very quick drivers. And then the final sector takes them through turns 10, 11, 12, and the final turn at 13 back to the finish line. So it's perhaps a case of not getting too excited in qualifying if somebody sets an absolute best in the middle sector, because that's, in a way, the least important of the 3 splits of the lap. So Muller's still out. Muller on a longer run now. He's done a few laps consecutively. And the pace has ebbed somewhere between the 1 minute 17.5s and 1 minute 18.5. So definitely running a different load and a different set of laps as we watch Ferdinand Habsburg now making his way around. Currently the driver second quickest from one of his early laps in the session. Yet to pick up any points in the season so far. But as I say there, Ferdinand Habsburg definitely showed some turns of speed on occasion at Spa, and I think there's definitely more to come from the likeable Austrian driver. Another newcomer is Harrison Newey. He was involved in an incident and picked up a penalty in the second race at Spa, but he's on a personal best lap here. He's currently 16th of the 16 drivers, but he might be about to change that. He needs to find quite a bit of time, though. His best lap's only 1:19.0. He needs to really be getting into the 1 minute 17s to be competitive. And in the end, he backs off on the final sector. So Harrison Newey, former single-seater racer, having done a bit of GT racing over the last couple of seasons, he's built up quite a wide portfolio, quite an array of different types of car that he's driven in what's still a relatively young career. And that can only be good for a driver that's developing. He's only 22 years of age still, based in Oxfordshire in the UK. And first burst onto the international scene in Formula 4. Did some selected French Formula 4 races, coincided that with a campaign in the British Formula 4. And he was the runner-up in the BRDC British Formula 4 Championship back in 2015. Got a couple of wins that season. Also dabbled in a bit of German F4 with the Van Amersfoort team, and then he moved into the FIA Formula 3 European Championship with Van Amersfoort in 2016. It was a testing season, but it's always going to be a testing season at that level in Formula 3 internationally. You can't really come into it, not many drivers come into it first season and are very, very successful, but he developed across the course of the year. And over the closed season in 2016-17, he went over to India and wrapped up the MRF Challenge Championship, his first major single-seater honours, before coming back for another season of European Formula 3. He's done some endurance racing, as I say, with Jackie Chan DC Racing, who was a multiple race winner in the 2017-18 Asian Le Mans Series, won the championship title with that team. Done some Japanese F3s, done some European Le Mans racing, and last year he was doing a variety of things, Super Formula, Japanese F3, European Le Mans, did a bit of British GT as well, so racking up the experience. And Harrison has just set his personal best through the first sector as we watch Robin Freins now, who's just about in the top 10 currently. But as I say, we don't know that he's necessarily been going for single lap pace so far. So Robin fourth in the championship standings after that. Now second place finish at Spa, about to go over the line. Some way away from his best lap of the session. But Robin with his 2 points finishes so far this year, a second, that slightly disappointing 9th place. And the former Formula Renault champion. Definitely one that's going to be running up the sharp end based on certainly race 2 at Spa, how well he went there. Helping Abt Sportsline up into the top of the points in terms of the team's championship after that first weekend. And Robin looking very, very smooth. Champion in Formula Renault Euro Cup and the 3.5 World Series. And 2 titles in Blancpain as well, the GT Series and the Sprint Cup, before moving into the DTM 3 seasons ago in 2018. Got a couple of second place finishes in that second season. His first podium at Misano. And worth noting as well that it's been a pretty busy week or so already for some of the drivers in DTM that have also been taking part not too far up the road in Berlin in the final 6 races of the season for Formula E. Robin Freins, one of them. René Rast and Nico Muller too. Of the 3, Robin had the best set of results, really. Got a couple of second place finishes, a couple of podiums. And then he wrapped that up on Thursday, having started the 6-round week of racing, the finale of the Formula E series in Berlin the Thursday before. René Rast got on the podium in one of the races. Muller didn't have such a good weekend, or week rather, was 12th place being his best finish. He did get fastest lap in the last race. So they've already been doing lots and lots of driving. They won't mind. Drivers go racing every day if they probably could. Switching to very different cars now, though. Great to hear the roar of these DTM machines. 2-litre turbocharged cars, absolutely fantastic. Catch your breath as they come past. So longer pace runs for Muller and Freins amongst others. Muller's still sort of lapping in the low 1-minute 18s, whereas obviously the single lap pace that he went for early in the session was a 1:16.7. And Robin Freins' best lap was a 1:17.3, and he's lapping in the mid 1:18s currently. We'll see what this lap is like when he crosses the line. A 1:18.2 for Muller, a 1:18.3 that was for Robin Freins. So pretty similar pace actually, only a 1/10 of a second between them. Most of the cars out on track currently. There's only Robert Quivetza who is in the pits, getting a bit crossed up there as Robin Freins as he attacks the wheel. Racing drivers these days have a wealth of buttons and gadgets that have to try and get their heads around as well. It's not just a case of accelerator, clutch, brake, steering wheel, go. It's all of the other things you have to get your head around and think about during the course of the race as well, where they can make some changes to the setups of the cars. Great view here, looking right over the shoulder of Robin, a Dutchman as he attacks, and it'll certainly be really up for Assen in 2 meetings time. Next weekend here at the Lausitzring, and then Assen at the start of September. Timo Glock, who looked like he might get some decent results after free practice and qualifying at Spa-Francorchamps, but again, he was one of the drivers who really struggled to keep the tyres going during the course of the race, and Team only picked up 1 points finish with an 8th place in race 1 at Spa, only 13th in race 2. Potential there for him to, and the rest of the BMWs really, to make big strides forward. On board with Timo now. last season at the Lausitzring. Wasn't a particularly kind weekend to him either. He had a retirement in the first race. He didn't get any points in the second race either. It's a personal best in the second sector, though, for Timo. Currently down in 15th spot. Building it up now as he makes his way back out of the banking, over the grid hatchings and headed towards the line. And as he's been quick in the third and final sector, he has a personal best there as well. It hasn't affected his overall position. He remains in 15th place. But again, we're not privy to what the teams and the drivers are setting up for here, where they are just going for out-and-out pace, or what most of them seem to now be going for longer run pace. Quickest driver out there on the previous lap was a 1 minute 18.4, and that was Philip Eng. But that's 1.4 seconds away from the fastest times that we saw at the very early part of the session. There's less than 10 minutes to go now as you go back on board with Timo Glock. And of course, like Robert Quivetza, this is a driver that's reached the dizzying heights of Formula One. Seems to have been around for a long time, Timo Glock, but he's still only in his late 30s. 94 Grand Prix starts, 3 times a podium finisher in Formula One. He actually started his motorsport career on 2 wheels in motocross back in the mid-1990s, but quickly found that he was very adept at single-seater racing. Was a Formula BMW champion some 19 years ago now, before he moved on to compete in Formula 3 in the German Championship, and GP2 champion as well before he got to Formula 1. He won the GP2 title a season after Lewis Hamilton won it. So Timo now going through consistent lap time, which is encouraging. 1 minute 17.8 on that lap, and a personal best in the first sector as well. And of course, the end of one lap affects the first sector, how much speed you carry over the start-finish line and through into turn 1. Quivetza still in the pits, has only done 17 laps. The majority of the field have done 20 or 21 laps now. A few of them that have done under 20 laps, but not many. Lucas Auer's only done 17. Quivetza, as I say, has only done 17. And Timo Glock had only done 17 now, but he's on a longer run, seemingly. Catching up to the BMW. I think Philip Eng in the foreground. Sights set on that. Just kicking at the dust, running over the curbs there with the right rear tyre, Timo Glock. Doesn't seem to affect his exit too badly though, and out through the final turn he goes now, about to come over the line. It is indeed Philip Eng that's just ahead of him. Philip still the 6th quickest time so far. And through goes Timo Glock, and that was a 1 minute 17.5. Sorry, 1 minute 18.5. So last few laps have all been within a couple of tenths of a second of each other. And understanding, as I say, how the tyres are going to be affected by a longer run, and where then you might need to think about how many laps into the race you ideally want to pull off your pit stop if the race falls your way. All important information that the teams need to gather here. And they'll have a bank of data from being here before. And having used this circuit last 2 years ago in 2017. Certainly closing up to Philip Eng at the moment. Philip's last lap was a 1:19.2, and quite a bit slower than Timo is currently going in his RMG Team BMW. Well, there's a very distinctive livery this year for Timo Glock. Stands out well, doesn't it? The RMG team run by Stefan Reinhold. Their last win with Marco Wittmann at Brands Hatch in the middle of last season in August, well, 12 months ago now, in August 2019. Timo closes up once again under braking onto the tail of the RBM BMW of Philip Eng. Both drivers' titles for Marco Wittmann coming with RMG. And a pretty solid year last year. Marco 3rd in the Drivers' Championship, and RMG 4th in the team standings. All right, replay. Oh, that was out of shape big time, wasn't it? Did he rescue it? Nope, clipped the wall. pretty hard hit in the right rear corner. Just on the way into the corner, he just got out of shape and it was hopping and skipping around. And hopefully, from his point of view, he's got away with that in terms of any serious damage to the car. But that was a fairly hefty hit. Square on, though, I think, so he might get away with that. Timo Glock certainly pushing on. As a racing driver, that's what you've got to do in these free practice sessions. Find the limit, maybe even creep over it sometimes. Hopefully not damage the car in the process. And then just pull it back a little bit. But until you get to the limit, you're never going to know where it is. Well, he's building up the pace to have another go at this, so he's obviously happy the car is all in good order still. And Timo Glock, now with a much clearer track ahead of him, fires his way over the timing beam and starts another lap here. Well, that was a lively moment. The first glimpse of somebody finding the wall here at the Lausitzring. I wonder if there'll be a few more of those during the course of the next 3 days here. Could well be. But it's so important to get a good run coming out of that final turn. The other thing to mention is that this circuit is pretty well renowned for being quite bumpy, and you've seen the car, especially at that last turn there, skipping around. If you just catch one of those bumps at the wrong point when you're flat out in a 600 brake horsepower car, you very easily find the wall. And the point is, you've got to get as close to it as you can. The closer to the wall you are, that means the earlier you've got on the power. I think he's backed off a little bit now, potentially, in terms of his speed, although he was fairly attacking through the first sector. No personal best lap times you should expect because he's on a longer run here. Great onboard pictures. Coming up to the scene of the crime again. They get here in no time, don't they? Now, 3.4 kilometre long lap. All good this time, though. Takes the low line, comes over the grid hatchings. His last lap was a 1:22.5, but that's more like it. 1:19.049. It's not as quick as he was going a couple of laps ago, though. He's in the low to mid 1:18s. Just to note as well on the screen to say that one car is under investigation for speeding in the pit lane. No recriminations as yet, but Loic de Val, that is, in the Team Phoenix Audi, under investigation for speeding in the pit lane. And if you're a fan to broach that rule, you might be finding that you got a bit less pocket money come the end of the weekend. You have to give some of that up in terms of a fine. Back with Timo then. He's found an absolutely clear track now. And I think all the cars are on track. Robert Kubica's gone back out now. So Kubica's just gone back out. A slowish build-up lap. But I guess they made some fairly hefty changes to that car. So he wasn't happy with the balance of it. He's ahead of Glock and Newey, but behind everybody else at the moment. Definitely getting busier in this last couple of minutes of the session now. There's Harrison Newey at the front of the picture, just behind Fabio Scherer, record holder with his record of being the first DTM driver to get over 300 kilometres an hour at Spa. So as I say, I reckon it will be in the second session where, although we've had some very quick laps early on in this one, I think that's where they'll perhaps work more on the single lap pace, because after free practice 2 this afternoon, the next session is going to be qualifying 1 tomorrow morning to set the grid for race 1. So Newey with a good start to the lap. A personal best through the first sector of 26.6 seconds, which is not uncompetitive actually. So the British driver, his second weekend as a DTM driver, having stepped in late to take over from Ed Jones, who's with the pandemic got all sorts of travel worries. It's just impractical for Ed really to take part this season as he's based out over in the UAE. 19.9 seconds through the short middle sector, which is about half a second off the absolute best. So losing time there. We'll see what the third sector is like. He's about to come out of turn 13, head for the line. And what does Harrison Newey achieve this time? It is a 1:18.899. That's his best lap so far, but he's still a second away from the other lap times of anybody else. Even to get up to 14th or 15th, he needs to find a second. Ferdinand Habsburg's gone through. He's second quickest from his earlier lap. At the moment, though, he's not lapping very rapidly. That was a 1:20.9. So the WRT Audi R5 begins another lap into the final 30 seconds of the session now. And Nico Muller having set the best lap time of the session pretty early on. The championship leader looking to maintain this record that he's got now of consecutive victories. There's Jonathan Abedin, another of the drivers to get over the 300km/h mark at Spa. You can see off the racing line it's quite dirty as well. Lots of, as the flag comes out, lots of marbles and bits of stone to try and avoid as they clear the track up in this first free practice session. You expect the track to get quicker as the weekend goes on. René Rast has taken the checkered flag, so too has Robin Freins, two of the front runners in the championship after Spa. Freins 9th, 11th place for Rast, but certainly there was a concentration on longer runs for René Rast. He ended the session having done, I think, more laps than anybody else. Yeah, 29 laps complete for René Rast. So very much with an eye on the long game here this weekend, as you would expect from a driver that is well comfortable that when he needs to, he can pull out a quick lap in qualifying. Timo Glock, Marco Wittmann have taken the checkered flag as well. There's no big improvements in terms of times with anybody that was going for a flying lap, having done that in the first part of the session, really. The 45 minutes here. Useful track time gain, though, as I say, for all of the teams and drivers, in particular the rookies. And a 1 minute 16.7, the fastest lap time so far. Perhaps one to keep an eye on when we get to free practice 2 this afternoon. Only 0.2 of a second covering the top 4. Nico Muller ahead of Ferdinand Habsburg, Marco Wittmann and Mike Rockenfeller in 4th place. Jamie Green, Philip Eng and Loic Duval all did a 1:17.0, a 1:17.031 for Green, 1:17.043 for Eng and a 1:17.069 for Duval. So that could barely be closer. And then we had Sheldon van der Linde looking good in 8th place with a 1:17.2. 1:17.3 was the best lap for Robin Freins in 9th place, and Lucas Auer getting into the top 10 with a 1:17.5. 1:17.6 is for Rast and Abedin in 11th and 12th, a 1:17.7 for Scherer in 13th, a 1:17.8 for Quivetza in 14th, a 1:17.9 for Glock in 15th, and a 1:18.8 for Newey in 16th place. Everybody getting lots of good running time there. Lucas Auer having, Robert Kubica having done the least laps of 21. Practice starts now, which is something else that they have to work on ahead of the race. Red lights come on. Loic Duval to the left of your picture, to the right of your picture, Jamie Green. First practice starts for them. Away pretty well, I would say. It's a fairly long charge towards the first turn. Next to have a go, going to be Harrison Newey to the left in the number 10 Audi, and Jonathan Abedin to the right in the BMW. Lights go out, they get underway. Newey with a pretty good start there, I would say. If you can recreate that in the races this weekend, I think you'll be pretty happy with that. And that's going to be quite a sight when the 16 DTM is going to turn 1 for race 1 tomorrow. There we see Fabio Scherer getting ready for his practice start. Away with no issues, and away better than Philip Eng on that occasion. Timo Glock now getting ready. You can see the process here from on board. Seems okay. Sound like it bogged down a little bit, and yeah, Mike Rockenfeller getting a better start to the left of him. Marco Wittmann and Sheldon van der Linde, who you're on board with now. Marco just to the right of the picture there. That's a good start for Sheldon. Or a poor start for Marco, not sure which. It looked pretty good for Sheldon van der Linde. No, Marco hasn't gone yet. So Sheldon on his own. And then Wittmann waiting to go next in the queue. And with Ferdinand Habsburg for company. BMW to the left, Audi to the right. And Wittmann slightly executing that better, I would say. René Rast is just about going to be the last one to get his practice start in here. As he rolls it up to the line, the two-time champion. Important to say as well that when the 10-second penalty was dished out this morning, well, just before we came on air, actually, it was all confirmed that Audi accepted the penalty. They haven't appealed it. How about that? Here's two drivers that might be side by side for a lot of the 2020 season. To the left, René Rast. to the right, Nico Muller, top 2 in last year's championship. First and third now in this year's championship, but they're continuing their battle in this condensed season. So Rast has gone away, Muller goes away now, and then Robert Quivetza is going to make the way to the line in the BMW, having made some setup changes to the car. Having been, we heard on the radio, complaining, well, not complaining, but just stating the fact that he wasn't 100% happy with the balance of the car.
You're one of the last cars on track, and pit entry is still clear. Pit entry is still clear.
Team radio to Rene Rast, just reiterating the point that you're pretty much one of the last drivers to take your start. Pit entry still clear. Florian Rinks is the engineer at Team Rosberg for Rene Rast. Kimmo Lemmertainen, the team principal this year for Team Rosberg, now second in the team standings coming into the weekend. Cars then being wheeled back into the garage places here at the Lausitzring, and their confirmation of the times at the end of that 45 minutes of free practice. Well, Nico Muller continues to get his name at the top of the table. 1 minute 16.714 seconds, but barely quicker than Ferdinand Habsburg, who had a promising start to the weekend in second place. And good news as well for BMW, third place for Marco Wittmann, with Rockenfeller fourth, Green fifth, Engen sixth, Deval, Van der Linde, Freins and Auer into the top 10. Rene Rast 11th, but not going for a single lap pace there, ahead of Abedin, Scherer, Quivetza, Glock and Newey. So there, the first 45 minute free practice session done. It's just past 10 to 2. And we've got at 4:30 the second free practice session. Confirmation then of the revised championship points after the penalisation of Rene Rast, who lost 10 points, dropped from first to third. Nico Muller promoted to the win, so 53 points for him, 30 points for Jamie Green, and Rene Rast now down to third place in the standings on 29 points. Hope you've enjoyed our coverage of Free Practice 1. We'll be back here later on this afternoon for Free Practice 2 here at the Lausitzring.
start.